This is Censor Studio. I will update you on the current situation of the Middle East war. This is the situation report for May 14th. Reports say the Iranian parliament is drafting a bill with an 87 billion won reward for assassinating President Trump. Ibrahim Yazadi, vice chairman of the National Security Committee, said he's preparing a bill titled Mutual Countermeasures of the Islamic Republic's Military and Security Forces, which reportedly includes this reward. It is being suggested that Iran currently prioritizes gaining international recognition for its legitimate authority to control the Strait of Hormuz over simply collecting passage fees. This seems like a strategy to get other countries to implicitly acknowledge Iran's control of the strait while letting them avoid sanctions and international issues from paying Iran's passage fees. There are concerns that acknowledging any Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, regardless of passage fees, could set a dangerous precedent. While Iran claims it can collect fees from ships passing through, it's unclear how many have actually paid. The shipping journal Lloyd's List reported that by the end of March 2026, at least 2 ships had paid passage fees in Iranian rials. However, Iranian authorities stated that as of April 16, no passage fees had been collected yet. Later, Iran officially announced on April 23 that it had received passage fees for the first time. At the same time, it appears that Iran is offering fee exemptions to so-called friendly countries. If a country takes actions or diplomatic stances approved by Iran, ships bound there may pass through the strait without facing sanctions. Abbas Araghchi, Iran's foreign minister, said on March 26 that China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan are friendly countries and their ships can freely pass through the strait. In addition, it is known that Malaysia and Thailand have also been allowed passage through separate agreements. In fact, most countries such as India, Russia, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Thailand are currently not being charged separate transit fees. Japan is no exception. Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi announced on May 14 that Japan secured an agreement with Iran for Japanese managed oil tankers to safely pass through the Strait of Hormuz without transit fees. On the same day, Iranian regime-affiliated media said at least 6 Chinese ships safely passed the strait, but it wasn't confirmed if they paid the transit fees. What is noteworthy is that most of these countries maintain relatively friendly relations with Iran. In particular, Japan has long played the role of mediator between the United States and Iran. In the end, the reason Tehran exempts so-called friendly countries from paying transit fees is not simply to make money, but rather by encouraging each country to follow Iran's transit regulations. It is ultimately a strategy to make them acknowledge Iran's control and sovereignty over the strait. Iran seems more interested in getting the international community to accept its own transit rules than in collecting transit fees. They aim to appear reasonable and show the strait is open if certain conditions are met. However, this is where the problem begins. Recognizing Iran's transit regulations could mean that Iran has the right to restrict access to the strait based on the actions of certain countries. Ultimately, this supports the claim that the Hormuz Strait is Iran's territorial waters, not an international waterway. In fact, China has expressed opposition to Iran's toll system and the blockade itself, but it has not clearly stated its opposition to Iran's claim of sovereignty. The Hormuz Strait is an international waterway. Recognizing Iran's claim now could set a dangerous precedent, allowing Iran to block passage through the strait in the future based on which countries it labels as hostile. For example, there is no guarantee that countries participating in sanctions against Iran, like the United Kingdom or France, will continue to be treated as friendly nations by Iran in the future. Iran has in fact been enforcing these transit rules by force. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations reported on May 14th from about 38 miles northeast of Fujairah, United Arab Emirates. They announced that the Honduran-flagged ship, Huichin, was seized by forces believed to be Iranian and moved toward Iranian territorial waters. On the same day, Reuters reported that Iran appeared to have attacked and sunk an Indian cargo ship that was heading from Somalia to the UAE in the Strait of Hormuz near Oman. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi of Iran said the strait is open to all commercial ships, but they must cooperate with the Iranian Navy. If the international community keeps tolerating these Iranian transit rules, Iran could arbitrarily block certain ships or countries from passing through the strait. There are growing concerns that this could seriously harm not only the United States, but also global maritime trade and the international commercial order. It has been reported that Chinese companies have discussed arms sales with Iranian authorities by using third countries as intermediaries. However, it is still unclear to what extent Chinese government officials have approved these arms deals and the subsequent transportation of the weapons. The New York Times reported on May 13, citing U.S. government officials, that U.S. officials did not specify what military equipment Chinese firms discussed with Iran. Several reports before the current war indicated Iran sought to obtain Chinese-made portable surface-to-air and anti-ship missiles. The US side also explained that among the countries considered as transit points for weapons transportation, at least one is an African country. China has provided assets that help strengthen Iran's military capabilities in both the current war and past cases. China provided missile fuel precursors to support the rebuilding of Iran's missile forces after the Israel-Iran war in June 2025. China has also reportedly given Iran satellite images of US military sites in the Middle East during the ongoing war. In particular, since the Chinese government strictly controls and directly approves the export of military and dual-use goods, it is unlikely that Chinese companies exported military equipment independently without explicit government approval. However, it is reported that even within the US government, there are differing opinions on whether these weapons have already been transported through third countries. The New York Times reported that so far, there have been no confirmed cases of Chinese-made weapons being used in attacks against US forces in the current war. The US Central Command announced on May 14 that since April 13, when the US blockade operation began, the US Navy has redirected a total of 70 ships, and among them, 4 were neutralized. If more news comes, I'll make and upload a video. This concludes the video. Thank you.
Ja.